Good evening and welcome back to Tropical Thursdays. I'm Chief Meteorologist Noel Ream.
And I'm Dr. Athena Masson.
And we got a lot to talk about this time compared to what we had last week. There's a lot of stuff going on right now in the tropics. As you can see, the tropics are heating up. Hurricane Eric and Tropical Storm Flossie are now in the Pacific. And if we take everything back towards the Atlantic Basin, we got a few tropical waves we want to talk about.
Typically for June and July, we only see about 2, maybe 3 named storms. We've seen Andrea, we've seen Barry, our first hurricane of the season just last month, but hey, Chantal might come very soon.
That's right. So you got to stay tuned for the next few minutes because we will talk about the potential for that next named storm, and that could be coming a little bit sooner than later. Now, what we want to talk about here is this Bermuda high, which is kind of backed off. It's not as strong or as persistent as it was just about a month ago. And as we head into August, things start to ramp up in the Atlantic, and this is one of the prime reasons why. Go ahead and talk about that a little bit more.
So the Bermuda high, it's constantly with us. It's a semi-permanent high pressure system. It shrinks, it expands. Right now, it's pretty small, doesn't really have a lot of influence in the atmosphere. But you see this little disturbance area of clustered thunderstorms moving clockwise around it. This will be pushed off. But this drives so many hurricanes and tropical developments in the Atlantic. And with it being so close off towards Africa and towards the tropics, it keeps these storms well down into the warm layers of the atmosphere, into the tropical layers of the water. And that's a problem. We kind of want to see this up more to the north so that tropical cyclones, they're not pushed down into these warm prime areas for development.
We've got one we want to talk about now, which is just basically right around the Bahama region. It has a 0% chance of development for the next 2 days and the next 5 days. It's just basically a cluster of showers and thunderstorms, bringing some pretty heavy rainfall around the Caribbean and also out towards the state of Florida. And that's one of the ones that we're looking at right now, just in terms of rainfall, not in terms of any development. We're going to take our way out towards the central Atlantic, where this has a better chance of developing.
Definitely a better chance right now at a 20% chance, but coming right off of Africa, just south of the Cape Verde Islands. This is typically when we see these major hurricanes starting to form. We are entering August. Generally, we do see our first major hurricane. Check it out, though. Next 5 days in this area, very minimal wind shear, prime sea surface temperature conditions, 70% chance of growing into a named hurricane. This is likely to be Chantal.
And we were just talking about that, and what's actually behind potential Chantal in the next several days is a pretty big area of showers and thunderstorms, and this actually looks quite impressive just coming right off of the coast of Africa. We're going to keep a close eye on that one as well.
And you can even start to see the counterclockwise rotation with that. There is a spin on that. Even right now, it looks very impressive on radar just coming off of Africa.
So, I mean, even as early as tomorrow, this may have some type of interest on it. And right now, as we head out towards the Pacific, we have Hurricane Eric. Still winds at about 80 miles per hour. This will continue to come down in strength and intensity, but just take a look. It's right south of some of the big islands right now, and it will continue to head out there towards the west. And it's going to be moving quite slowly Thursday at 70 miles per hour, 8 o'clock Hawaii Standard Time, and then Friday eventually back to about 50 mile per hour winds. Yeah,
and the Big Island at this point has high surf warnings, even some flood advisories with it. But it's very interesting when these hurricanes approach the islands of Hawaii, because of the Kilauea volcano right on the Big Island there, it does act like a little bit of a microclimate. And you can sort of see on the radar here these areas of rain being sheared up, these higher level tops of this hurricane right here, and it's just interesting to see how just a small island like that, it does affect the atmosphere around it. But luckily, this is not heading into Hawaii. Just a lot of rain showers, mostly for the northern part of the storm, moving over to the Big Island, but this will slowly move off towards the west and die very slowly.
And yesterday, models were indicating the one right behind it, which is Flossie. Now, this was going to try to hang out and potentially try to give Honolulu and some of the Hawaiian Islands a chance for that to make impact. But what we've noticed with the latest model runs, that might not be true.
Yes, so as of the latest update from the National Hurricane Center, this does not extend out far enough, but once we're looking out to next week, we see a low pressure system right above here. It will pick up this hurricane, and at this point likely to only be a tropical storm, and instead move it and curve it to the north away from the islands. This is great news for the islands of Hawaii.
So we take a look at the August breeding grounds. Things are in full swing swing across much of the Gulf, much of the Atlantic, and out towards the Caribbean. Here's one of our primetime areas we're keeping a close track of, because if anything does develop, it's going to be headed out straight to Texas.
And here is a fun fact with Texas and the month of August. August generally is when Texas sees the most hurricanes and the most major hurricanes impact the shoreline. So
Right.
September, on average, throughout the whole North Atlantic, that is the peak month of hurricane season. But if you want to just relate it to Texas, your peak month, it's August.
That's right. And we've got some other areas of interest. This is going to be for parts of the Caribbean, and then we talk about our next breeding ground.
Yes, so at this time of the year, we're now focusing on a wider area of the open Atlantic. Prior to August, we're only focusing on these little patches of areas that hold in these high sea surface temperatures. So a hurricane typically needs sea surface temperatures of about 80 degrees in order to evolve. Well, here comes August. It's summertime. It's definitely hot here in the Concho Valley and just hot all across the North Atlantic. So now we're looking well off towards Africa, and that's where that disturbance is that could be possible,
Yep.
Chantal. So right in that area, and then tracking this whole entire region, because it's prime breeding ground right now.
And that's right. It has a long way to go before it has any chance of hitting any land, but that could be a bad thing because it will allow a lot of time for anything to strengthen that does encounter those warm eastern and central Atlantic waters. And that's something we will continue to watch. Take a look at these sea surface temperatures. 90-degree sea surface temperatures out around the Bahama region. South Florida around 90 degrees as well. Out towards Cuba, 90-degree waters as well. Even 86-degree waters along the west coast of Florida. That's still quite warm.
It's bath
this time of year.
Yes, it's bath water for these hurricanes. Anything that forms within these areas, we are watching some wind shear, mostly crossing over the Yucatan all the way to Cuba. That is preventing anything from forming. But if anything right now were to be in the Gulf of Mexico, bad news, because prime sea surface temperatures.
It sure is. The waters are extremely warm, and that means that the development will continue as we move through August. August is a prime time for the Atlantic to heat up, and that's what we are starting to see, and hopefully things aren't going to be too wild this year. We had a pretty wild year last year, and we don't want the repeat of that.
Yes, we definitely don't.
The tropics are heating up for sure across the Atlantic and the Pacific. We actually got Hurricane Eric and Tropical Storm Flossie in the Pacific, and that last one, I'll let you take that over.
Tropical waves in the Atlantic Basin. We definitely have to watch out for those two. The one off the coast of Florida, not really a concern about, lots of wind shear within that area, but the one just coming off of Africa, south of the Cape Verde Islands, that's possible, Chantal, I will call it.
Right, and we just showed you the waters, 85 to 90-degree water. That is bath water, prime time breeding potential for these storms that come off of the coast of Africa and move through parts of the Atlantic, and that's what we're going to continue to monitor over the next several days. But once again, we want to thank you guys for joining us on our Tropical Thursdays. We hope to see you back here next week.